Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to The Discerning Gamer. Today, the announcement trailer dropped for Steel Division Normandy 1944. It's a World War II RTS game, and though I'm always interested to see new RTS games on the scene, as the genre's in a bit of a dip at the moment, this one has me in particularly hyped. Why, you ask? First of all, because it's developed by Eugen Systems. These are the people behind the Wargame franchise and Ruse. They also did Active Aggression, but everybody gets one, and the less said about that, the better. With Steel Division, it looks like they're returning to what they're good at, and that's RTS games deeply rooted in authentic military history and doctrine on a large scale with lots of units to choose from. It's also using an upgraded version of their proprietary iris zoom engine, which I think worked beautifully for the grand level strategic elements of the game, and also getting down and really appreciating the visuals of the battle and any small scale micro. So what do we know about Steel Division? The announcement trailer itself doesn't give away that much information. It more sets the mood. However, if we have a rummage round on their website and the Reddit, there's actually a wealth of information available about the game, which I'll run through now. Of course, I'll put links to all of these sources in the description below. So first up, it looks like we're going to be choosing from 400 different units when composing our armies, and I hope to see Eugen's usual care and attention to historical accuracy in those units as well. A VentureBeat article states that these units will come from the USA, Great Britain, Germany, France, Canada and Poland. However, taking a sidestep from Wargame, where we composed armies along national bases, it looks like we'll be doing it more on the basis of division in Steel Division, funnily enough. So we're definitely going to be seeing a return to the kind of deck building and army composition metagame that we saw in Wargame. We're going to have up to 10v10 multiplayer, as we did in Wargame, with ranked matches as an option. 10v10 is not enormously interesting to me because I feel like it could end up being a bit of a clusterfuck. However, I'd love to see that level of option and catering to a wide base so that we have a flourishing community and people are happy with that. So in the first big break from the Wargame formula, battles are going to have 3 distinct phases which are unlocked over time, and that's in an attempt to mimic the way that real-world armies fought during World War II. We're also going to have a dynamic frontline system. However, there's no real details yet on how that's going to impact the gameplay. The maps are going to be based on real aerial reconnaissance photos from World War II, so perhaps we're going to see a deeper level of authenticity and craftsmanship where the maps are concerned, which is definitely exciting. But it wouldn't surprise me, particularly in the multiplayer, if we saw some tweaks and balances to make it more equitable, shall we say. The PC Gamer reveal article mentioned that the unit veterancy system will function differently from Wargame as well. So we're not going to be increasing units' veterancy in the game. In fact, we're going to be deciding what veterancy our units are in the army composition, and also it sounds like they're going to be more expensive or perhaps limited in the game, which is kind of like Wargame, but that will have a much greater impact on their performance, particularly in terms of morale and stress under combat, how they cope with their behaviour under fire. And that leads nicely into a revamped morale/stress system that looks like it's been deeply expanded. So according to PC Gamer, units can now be pinned by machine gun fire, and they will act with some sense of self-preservation if they're too stressed. So they might actually surrender to the enemy or retreat, and that is a whole new angle to gameplay. So it'd be interesting to see how that links into the frontline system. Perhaps we're going to be able to see encirclements, which were obviously quite a big part of particularly the opening phases of World War II in the German strategy. So, why am I excited for this game? There's a number of reasons, but perhaps the most obvious to start off with is that Eugen is switching to a new publisher. Previously, Ruse and Wargame were published under Focus Home Interactive, a French, I believe, publishing house. They've now moved to Paradox, and I think it's fair to say that Paradox have pretty much never released a bad game, and they also have a great reputation for sticking with their games over time and really going in deep with support, additional content, and fostering a dedicated niche community. And I think that plays beautifully into Eugen's strengths in game development. And I think it's fair to say that Focus Home Interactive had a bit more of a scattergun approach to publishing, and I definitely much prefer Paradox's model. So obviously it's very early days to be saying this, but the name Normandy 44, which seems to be almost a subtitle, and also the choice of Paradox as the publisher seem to point to that we're going to see if the game is successful, perhaps a big expansion on this base game, or a franchise springing out of this, and it could be taken to any number of different theatres, the Pacific, Africa, the Eastern Front, or even to entirely new wars like Vietnam, with more of a in-depth focus on those conflicts, whereas obviously Wargame spanned a very large theoretical span of time. This is obviously grossly premature, but I think it's exciting to invest in a game series which is going to have a long future and always be offering you more and rewarding you for learning it, sticking with it, investing in your time in getting the skills to be really good at this game series. So we're entering kind of wild speculation zone here. However, I think that the division-based deck building system and the 3-phase battles are going to massively shake up the formula of what we've seen from Eugen games previously, and I think they'll play off each other in a big way. So in Wargame, particularly in competitive play, we would see decks that definitely excel at certain things. However, they have to cover all of the bases to be able to deal with any situations. However, with the divisions that we're likely to see in Steel Division and the distinct battle phases, it could mean that we can see much more specialised divisions and styles of play that excel in different phases of the battle. So, for example, a motorised infantry deck might be very strong in the opening phase of the game, able to get out a lot of infantry, flood the field, take a lot of ground off the enemy and dig in. However, they then might suffer or have to play defensively in the later parts of the game because they're going to have limited access to tanks or perhaps air support. Whereas if you're playing a heavily armoured division, it's reasonable to expect in the opening phases of the game you're going to have a light reconnaissance force moving ahead of the main bulk of the armour. So the early game for you is going to be very defensive and just trying to keep a toehold in the map, and then suddenly in comes phase 2 and 3 where the big boys start tipping up, and then the onus is really on you to push through your opponent and capitalise on what your deck is good at. So obviously this is pretty wild speculation, but I think it does sound to me like it makes a lot of sense for the way that the game's actually going to be designed, from the battle phases and the divisional deck building. Because I mean, why else would you put those battle phases in unless it was to emphasize the strengths and weaknesses of more specialized divisions? Well, I mean, I could have completely the wrong end of the stick. Let me know in the comments below if you think I have and you've got a better suggestion. So the frontline system looks like, from the one gameplay screenshot that we've got, that the front line and where that is on the map in relation to your enemy will actually determine the victory points in the battle and how many resources you're getting per second. And as far as I'm aware, this is an entirely novel approach and really interesting. I also think it will marry up really nicely, potentially, with the expanded morale and stress system. Perhaps by combining that with the frontline system, we'll be able to see encirclements where your troops will surrender if they're completely cut off from the rest of their army, which will lead to very different gameplay than what we've seen in previous Eugen titles. Perhaps it could even be used in more nuanced ways. For example, if there's a bulge in your lines and the units in that bulge feel that their flanks aren't adequately covered, perhaps that will make them more likely to break or surrender or to feel more stress under fire. And the mention of suppressing fire and all of this kind of morale and stress does seem to indicate to me that perhaps we'll be seeing a more fleshed out infantry micro system, which I would definitely welcome. However, obviously, getting the balance right with that so that you're not flitting all over the map, having to micro really intensely whilst also looking at the larger strategic picture and moving big groups of units and tanks. That'll be an interesting balance for the developers to hit, but I would like to see a little bit more hands-on infantry play than we do see in the current war game, where it's, you know, kind of just moving groups of them and worrying about minor kind of positional details. So the fact that we're also moving to a more simplistic era of warfare could also mean that we're going to see more fleshed out control details, because we're going to have less burden on us as players to remember complex details of the advanced weapon systems that we're dealing with. So, you know, the ECM on your planes will be non-existent. The radar guidance systems or fire and forget systems will no longer come into play because we're not going to have missiles. So that could be a good indicator that we're going to see some more intensive or expanded control options, as the units will be a bit more straightforward. So far as well, the art looks very encouraging. Obviously, it's going to be based off real aerial reconnaissance photos from World War II, and I'm not sure if it's just me, but from the screenshots, you be the judge, if we're going to see more destruction or perhaps a more fleshed out role for destruction and terrain deformation in the actual gameplay and the maps. Either way, it's a nice step up from Red Dragon, and I'm certainly feeling more excited about the game just looking at the art direction that they've taken with it. In summary, this is a game I'll be watching closely and creating more content on. Wargame's been a staple of my gaming diet for years, and the depth and design craftsmanship in that series has been enough to keep a dedicated community engaged for years. So I'm thrilled to see a new title from Eugen. I like the setting. I think that they've chosen a fantastic publisher to partner up with on it, and this can only bode well for the title as far as I'm concerned. Let me know any of your hopes or concerns with what we've seen on the title already, and any other information that I've missed, and I'll make a supplementary video. If you'd like to see more of this stuff, please subscribe, guys. I'll definitely be making more videos and coverage on this title as information becomes available. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like. If not, dislike is over there, and also constructive criticism is relished. I've been the Discerning Gamer. Until next time.